And this is exactly what our strategy at the moment is, using the data sovereignty goals that we have, giving people back the control over their data, over their ID, over their business, what they do in the future, in the internet or in these connected systems that we see, or it needs to be trusted. And if we combine, and this is my main statement for today, if you combine the decentralized trust that we were working on since 10, 15 years already now, with the upcoming opportunities of agents, AI agents, then definitely we will come to a point where you have new technologies which you can trust again.
Welcome everyone to Beyond the Cosmoverse, the podcast that goes beyond the Cosmoverse stage. I am your host, Roberto Cassa, Marketing Director at Cosmoverse. Today's conversation is at the intersection of AI agents, decentralized infrastructure, and enterprises, because our guest is one of those rare individuals that sits at the intersection of those topics. So it is my pleasure to welcome Peter Busch. Welcome, Peter.
Hello, welcome to you.
And Peter, you have 35 years of experience at Bosch. So you are not only an expert in the AI field and decentralized infrastructure, but you have a deep experience on enterprises. One question that I have for you goes deep into where your journey started when it comes to DLT, because you are the global product owner of DLT at Bosch, is when you actually start to speak internally about DLT, because this was definitely a very early moment.
Right, exactly. So maybe I have to give you a little bit more background on it because that has a larger history. When I started really my career, I started with, I would say, the IT industry in the financial background. Yeah, I worked for JP Morgan in Frankfurt directly on the trading floor. So I already got a lot of very interesting technical environment for really serious and for interesting business and background. And so we had always to see, okay, how stable is the system? How can we really have backup servers, have like I would say a good data connection running and so on. That I had all my life since then. But in the last years, it changed completely again here, what kind of infrastructure systems we're gonna need. So when I started at Bosch like 20 years ago already, I was there definitely for the Internet of Things, yeah, as well. Lots of connectivity things, how our devices, how the services from our products can connect to each other. And we had first ideas in these terms is how would it change the technology strategy of Bosch? And this was really something that started already, I would say, in 2010, 2011. So understanding what kind of business is out there and who is controlling these businesses. And we found out quite soon that there is not really a balance on industry and tech industry and markets and stuff, but there are decentralistic platforms on the other side when it comes to the internet, when it comes to high connectivity business and products. So I think we started with really looking at DLTs in 2015 when all the hype really started around blockchains, around really understanding Bitcoin could be something, influencing the industry as well. And we had a large strategic project in Bosch starting 2016-17. It was called Economy of Things. And this was really something with like 40 people from all over Bosch and all sectors where we looked at the intersection really here of information technology, connectivity, as well, data connectivity, data exchange, and value exchange, of course. And so I was then already the product owner for all these technologies for mobility. So my main thing is here looking at traffics, at cars, car-to-X, car-to-car communications. And that was the point when it started, when we looked at, okay, what is the technology behind it? What is the relevance for the industry? What are the business models? What are possible challenges to that? And this is really where we started intensively looking at these different opportunities and possibilities.
I'll say that this is very early and something that you don't expect from an enterprise with 400,000 employees, especially because we have the idea that most of these giants move very slowly, but now you're telling me that very ahead, even before we had I could say a retail wave in the blockchain industry, Bosch was already thinking in terms of this technology and how they can empower the future within the proven engineering methods already within Bosch. And my question truly is, what was the exact moment that the strategy actually became more firm and more decisive towards this technology?
Yeah, just to really as well set the tone, because as we all can see, these decentralization things and the blockchain technologies really didn't scale at a whole bigger scale for the industry yet. Yeah, so I'm still waiting for that. And we still had large studies with the big consultant companies of thinking, okay, how is the market developing? What are the challenges? Why is there a hindrance really in bigger adoption? As one of the outcomes of this huge strategic project I talked about, that was 2021, 22. So we, on the one side, we had Corona. Yeah, so we had to stop a lot of different activities on the one side. But on the other side, we had a huge change as well in world politics already coming in. And so this was then when we found out, hey, we need some kind of changes in technology. We need to have more, I would say, data privacy. We have a huge number of new regulations in Europe, especially. And this told us, okay, now we need as well to change our strategies in terms of product setup, in terms of communication to the end customer, to our customers, which are mainly I would say B2B customers like the big car manufacturers. And so we were ready like starting 2021, 22 with products. But again, the industry was not ready. And so the big car manufacturers were always very interested, and we have lots of contacts directly in the different stakeholders of these car manufacturers. But they told us all the time, it's not yet there. So we do not really understand how to earn a lot of money with that. And so just to answer your question, it really just changed in the last years now that we see a lot of change is coming in terms of data sovereignty. And that again, in combination with a lot of needed regulation, which is coming from the EU in terms of decentralization, decentral identities and all that for cars, for people, for products, we see a huge chance to start over and to really get it going. So we have a lot of good ideas, I would say. We discussed these with the industry, with the markets. And again, why don't you see this in a scaled approach on the streets right now already? It's just because of a plethora of different factors, yeah, really hindering that at the moment. However, we are ready, and I think it started to really get traction or got traction, like I would say 2-3 years ago only. And this is really what we are set up right now.
And you mentioned something that is already tapping in your vision of the economy of things, because you mentioned trust, and actually that's where it connects between autonomous system and decentralized infrastructure. So maybe can you guide me through your idea of economy of things, or maybe it's already not anymore an idea, but actually something that is happening?
Right, exactly. I think I can really then start with the results of this Economy of Things project, because what we found out is really we need, I would say, an alternative approach to proprietary centralistic systems. So this was really the outcome. This is nothing new, but we had a scientific, I would say, approach behind it. We had a market look behind it, so what could work, and to understand, I would say, game theory analysis and theories behind that, understanding what happens in the centralistic market with the huge data platforms that we see out there. And it didn't change, and it's getting even worse. So what we now really understood is one of the big results of this project was we need to have some kind of a, I would say, user-centric or product-centric approach. And this came in parallel with the world politics and the changes. As I said it before, data provenance, data security, trust, and data sovereignty. And so the EU started really developing an idea of a vision of having a decentralized or decentralization approach when it comes to identity. So we have this huge regulation coming up, which I would say is a good regulation, because always we say, oh, regulation slows us down and hinders us to do business. But this time it really helps the industry, because the industry needs to use some kind of an approach for a identity for persons, for companies, for products coming up in the next years. and not using Apple, Google, and the other centralistic approaches or the hyperscalers. So we need to have a control for the end user coming together with the data regulation and the AI regulation as well. So that help us really in that case to come up with products with an idea of a real data sovereignty approach again. So when we set out now our products in terms of a decentralized way, because this idea products that we will roll out in the field needs to have some kind of a decentralized infrastructure behind it. Yeah, not always set into my iPhone or my Android phone with having always the controlling platform owner behind it, but have a more decentralized means of a little bit the government can control it, a little bit the industry can control it, but mostly in a Web3 sense, the user can control its own wallet in its own identity. And this is exactly what our strategy at the moment is, using the data sovereignty goals that we have, giving people back the control over their data, over their ID, over their business, what they do in the future in the internet or in these connected systems that we see. Then the governments, the industry will work together. However, if you look at the hyperscalers at the moment, they are not happy about these changes in Europe. Yeah, so we see when it comes to the speeches and I would say the influences of the big hyperscalers and other interesting stakeholders who tell us what you are doing in Europe, we do not really like. However, they see they can't do business anymore in a huge scale in the future if they do not change. And this could be a huge change for us. And this was always our strategy. Of course, working together with Google, with Apple, with others. However, they need a little bit adjust to these more data sovereign technologies we need to use in Europe. This is exactly, yes, I would say, the leverage that we need at the moment to, I would say, convince the industry, convince the end user to use that in the future because they want to have more control over the data. They want to have more trust in their data and as well in the other business relations they have in the future. And this is exactly helping us. So just have a short here. Regulation, governments, industry, and world politics come together here, yeah, to help us doing that in the future.
I can definitely see from what you just shared the two main concerns being regulation and trust. And on this regard, I can definitely also say that I'm seeing in Europe having this movement toward digitalization that especially goes into tapping into sovereignty and gaining sovereignty from the American tech giants. This is happening even at a payment level with MasterCard and Visa, with different processes happening, digital euro, for example. In this regard, when it comes to the economy of things, can you picture how that looks like in practice with a practical example? Like, is it a machine transacting autonomously? Like, if you can share more insight in this regard.
A very good example here definitely would be a car who needs to authenticate itself to any infrastructure. When it comes, the most simple example here is really a charging pole, yeah, but not a good example for Europe because we have such a heterogeneous infrastructure for that. However, when any system appears, when you drive through a smart city, for example, the car needs to authenticate itself when it wants to charge, when it wants to park, when it wants to get any information from the city that it needs. The ultimate example then would be autonomous driving for the future. So you always have a car, maybe with a driver in it or without, needs to trust the other side, the other endpoint. And for that, we need to have a sovereign endpoint in the car, a sovereign identity of the car itself. This is exactly where we are going to implement this digital decentralized identity in a car. Yeah, so the car has its own, I would say, hardware-based identity, yeah, which is very secure, which you can't hack from the outside, and can then, on a decentralized way, controlling it by itself to this infrastructure outside. So you can name any use case that you can think of if you are outside with your car, connecting to charging poles, parking structures, and the like. Look at gating. If you need to enter the inner city and you have some specific restrictions, yeah, and you can't go there with a combustion engine, it needs to be electric car, and then you can prove that your car is electric and has some of these regulations really already built in, and then you're allowed to do it. But there you have the infrastructure needs to trust you, and you need to trust the infrastructure. This is exactly the point where we need to comply to the regulation on the one side, but again, the user then can trust that infrastructure, can trust that car, and feels better. And the third part, of course, it's much cheaper. Because if you look, for example, in a car-to-car or in-car payment use case of the future, and you always have these like 10, 20, 30% transaction costs when it comes to credit cards, when it comes to Apple Pay or Google Pay, or that this is very expensive at the moment. And, but
it removes the middleman.
There's no alternative to it. And in the future, we'll see a decentralized approach to that. So we have several examples coming up at the moment where all the car manufacturers, the banks, and as well the end user definitely need alternatives here too. And this is that's where we definitely go. So the car is a basis with its built-in identity. And from here, as a trusted platform, then you can put on the in-car payment, the connectivity issues, and all the authentication things on top of it.
You painted a picture which is very clear and was towards mobility. Is it mobility the core focus right now for this technology at Bosch, or are you also experimenting with other sector?
Yeah, that is the huge advantage of Bosch. Mobility was always the biggest, most relevant sector of Bosch, with the biggest revenue as well. However, we have building technology, we have as well typically industrial technology, we have power tools, we have as well all the things in the kitchen, all the whiteware, like dishing washers, washing machines, and all these products, and they all use the same methodology in the future. So we start out with mobility because, this is my home turf, the product owner for all these mobility technologies. But again, you can just use these for all these technologies as well. So in Bosch, we have a broad portfolio, and we can use this what we start here already in all the other sectors. And when it comes, for example, to product passes, the electronic or digital product passes, which is another regulation which will come up, that every product needs to authenticate itself in a digital trusted way. And just again, as an example, what we have in mobility, we can directly transport to these other areas, where I have as well product owners sitting, which then have their products, their service in mind and using this technology for their portfolio.
So I really like that you, from an enterprise perspective, are really dedicated to care about trust of these systems, because it really shows how careful Bosch is when it comes to actually implementing those technologies, really thinking about the end user. One important thing I think, especially in this era, is do users actually care about this thing and the trust and the privacy? Because what I'm seeing, for example, with this very first wave of AI, when it comes to Claude, ChatGPT, and all these systems, where the company pretty much owns all the data, users don't really care about their trust and privacy. Is this where regulation actually needs to step in and protect at the same time also the user, because they don't protect themselves?
That's a really, really interesting issue. Absolutely. And I found out like already 10 years ago when we discussed the same ideas what we have with our American colleagues. In the US, it's completely different because Apple, Google, and so are directly their DNA. Yeah, and they say, okay, this is our product and we like it. We do not need trust. I give them my data, and for that I get cheap or free services. And so they didn't care about trust. However, I think, as was said, that's why world politics are so important for the future for us. When you look into the future, especially with AI, look about all these, I would say, the fear that we now have of who can we trust anymore still in the future. Deep fakes, for example. You cannot really trust anything you find in the internet. So this is just the beginning. It's not a big deal, yeah, if I'm in social media and I see pictures or stories and I do not really believe them anymore. But think about real products on the streets, real, I would say, situations where you need to trust the infrastructure. And if there is in front of you a deep fake situation, and you do not say, is there really a free crossing in front of me? Or is this just a hacker? Or is this just a hallucination of any AI model, which I can't trust and all that? And then it's getting more and more important. And I would say the end user, they need still sometimes to understand that, but we are really shortly before the understanding that we see the trust issue as a killer app. And this is always what we're looking at. We always want, that's what my managers always ask me. And what is now the killer? Where do I earn now these billions of dollars, euros, yeah, on the other side? And I just can tell them, you will see that the end user, the industry, not only through regulation, not only through governments all the time, but the end user wants to or needs to desperately find more trust in their daily life. And this is exactly what we need to build into all the products, to all the services. And this will go in more and more in this direction. You always have a connected systems. You always have some kind of a, I would say, counterpart on the other side, where you never know who it is on the other side or what this is. Yeah, is this an LLM? Is this some agents on the other side who can help you, of course, which is a good thing. Yeah, so I'm really a huge proponent of AI at the moment. However, it needs to be trusted. And if we combine, and this is my main statement for today, I would say, if you combine the decentralized trust that we were working on since 10, 15 years already now, with the upcoming opportunities of agents, AI agents, then definitely we will come to a point where you have a new, I would say, area, a new of new technologies which you can trust again. Yeah, so we need to really absolutely avoid a situation that you are really do not have any control, not only about your data in a social network. So that was not a big issue. So everybody could live with that somehow. But on the other side, if your life, if your safety and all that is depending on that trust on the roads with your product in the company or where else, then definitely you need to have some kind of a trust in the system. This is exactly what we are working on at the moment.
This is actually where I'm very interested in your insight, because I don't think there are many people that can combine this knowledge across AI, decentralized infrastructure, and enterprise. You're also one of those rare individuals that already approached the Web3 more deeply compared to other enterprise players. So where your experience with the Fetch.ai Foundation goes, because you mentioned the AI agents, and Fetch.ai is very focused on the agentic economy. So where does that fit into your broader vision?
Exactly, yeah, that is a good that you mentioned that here. So that was one of the other results of the economy of things thing. So that we say we need some means of a foundational approach of understanding better what multi-agent system can do for us and for the industry. So we built it, or we founded the Fetch.ai Foundation to understand the governance, to understand the technology behind it. How can we build that? And I think we succeeded already in terms of how can we understand to build up an ecosystem of agents, which are grounded on trust, which are grounded on an economical sound basis, which is not only the only business model is one controlling unit at the backside is controlling all the data and all the trust and so, and you can buy that. But on the other side, you have a more decentralized Web3 means of using your own agents. You are controlling them in a Web3 sense. You have your wallet with your ID and with your in-car payment base as well on it, and let the agents work on your behalf. So this is exactly that result of the foundation already. What we found out is we need to set up an ecosystem where you have a trusted infrastructure around you, where you can use the Web3 components, the wallets, the ID in the car and all that stuff. And on top of that, you generate or you use agents from yourself or from other side. But these as well need to have some kind of a economical decentralized ID. So you can authenticate to these agents if you want to use them, and you exactly know where they are from, what they want, what they can deliver to you. And then you would be open to pay as well, or get paid because you have your own means on that. And this was already the big result, what we have here. But again, the foundation is just a government structure. It was not really a profit thing. It was a non-profit. So we are already here that we say, now we can start developing that stuff with the industry, with other companies, and say, okay, let's build this ecosystem. Let's use these the regulations in our sense and do business with it. So the foundation was more or less a vehicle that we needed to build up the governance structures, to understand about the ecosystems and the technologies, And now we are at a point where we start talking to the industrial players who do not care about the foundation. Yeah, they say, hey, we need to make money, we need to have products, we need to do business. And it's exactly the point where it now makes sense and where it's very important to understand how to industrialize now that knowledge into products and into the industry.
I think this is also goes back to sovereignty because Fetch.ai is built with Cosmos SDK, which is a sovereign blockchain.
Right.
And when it comes to sovereignty, do you see also some sort of sovereign AI being available for user? Because that's also one missing step for trust.
Right.
Because if I fully own that AI agent, it's sovereign, I own the data, or the AI agent own his own data, like that's probably what is needed for this technology to reach
Absolutely.
broader adoption.
That's what I meant exactly with trusted agents. So when you spawn or when you create a new Fetch agent on the Fetch ecosystem, then you start with a smart contracts behind it, yeah, on the Cosmos environment as well. So this is exactly that moment that it gets a unique ID. And if you can connect that, which is really safe and in the Web3 sense, proprietary for the user. Yeah, so he built it themselves and he has a sovereign access to it and controls it. It's exactly what I mean by trust in that sense. What the same is, the equivalent is the trust that I see for data sovereignty with the ID in the car. Yeah. So we have two different systems. We have the hardware basis in the car, we have the ID, and then we have the software layers, the architecture of the car, using agents, using other software, using other mechanisms, and their trust mechanisms. So in this combination, this is why the role to play for Bosch, yeah, and the classic, I would say, industrial powers of Germany, of Europe, of other bigger companies, use their mechanical hardware and other knowledge to build products, to use this available, really, I would say, high-tech software to control it better. Because this is one of the main things that we have most fears about, what we see as well on the markets. People do not trust anymore these huge software platforms. Of course, they use it and they say, oh, for social networks and for other things, it's quite nice and it's okay. And I'm okay to give my data for not paying for these services. Yeah, everybody's using Google Maps. Everybody's using email on their system and stuff. But again, just have to repeat myself. If it comes to more relevant systems, when it comes to safety, security and all that, when I need to trust that information which comes to my side, I need sovereign ID, I need sovereign agents, I need sovereign software or data platforms. And exactly this is what we are not there yet. Yeah, so we do not have a ready product to sell already. So we need to have the industry working together on that part, and as well the communities out there, the software communities. I would say just as well the users. And here is one big thing, one big finding from me in the last months, what I have. Every common user, which is not a software expert, can now build software themselves. Yeah, this is really something very irritating, something very fascinating new approach. So software is not rocket science anymore. Yeah, it was never. Yeah, if you're a computer scientist. However, if you're a normal user who doesn't really have the time or have the, I would say, the endurance, yeah, to learn computer languages, to learn the IT systems behind it, you just use the existing generative AI tools that you have, build your own software. But then when it's so easy to come to software, you need on the other side a trusted hardware that this thing is working on. And so again, here we have a thing that the role to play comes up absolutely into our focus. We use the system. You still need a car, yeah, to drive around. You still need a building to sit in, which is hardware. You still need products which you can have in your hands and you can work with. But all that stuff is run by software. And it comes more and more into play that you have, I would say, wipe coded stuff or AI engineered, which I would like it better, AI engineered products and software running on it. What every normal person can build in the future. However, but they need to trust that stuff again. And for that, you need, again, the sovereign elements in it. Yeah, the hardware, which you need to trust, the software on top, and of course, the AI agents, which then run on these systems.
I think that what you defined here is truly a trust architecture in the very sense of 2026? What is needed in 2026 to actually build an architecture that can enable full trust in all the layers? From the other side, you have a big company that are betting all on the UX, so make it easier for user. So there is also a challenging of what the user will choose in terms of, do I go with a trusted platform setup, or do I go with UX? Because speaking for myself, for example, working in marketing, I need to accelerate constantly and keeping myself updated because I need to remain competitive, and to remain competitive, you need to use these AI tools today.
Absolutely.
So what actually can go wrong by trust these systems that don't actually have a focus on enabling trust?
That's exactly the thing I just wanted to point it out earlier. When we looked at the social media, or I would say the Web 2 systems of the past, what we always had is, hey, this is a system which is free, which you just can use, but you don't need to trust it, yeah, because trust is built in. You buy that. You have professional accounts. If you need more trust, blah blah blah. However, if you are a person in 26, 27 and upcoming, you have new systems which are built by not professional companies. You get more and more, I would say, wipe coded systems. Yeah, and this is really flooding the scene at the moment. Really, what you see, and the huge challenge and problem here is, I wouldn't trust them from the beginning, because you never know what is behind it, how they build it up, and everybody knows it's not the I would say the time that you need to code that stuff. It's a time to need to validate the system. Are they secure enough? Can I trust them? Where does the data flow? What are the holes in the background? Yeah, that the hackers can use in the future. And again, for that, you need to trust the system it runs on, and you need components which are secured, for example, again, by your decentralized digital identity, and that you exactly know these components I do not have built myself, they are already there. And again, trusting or using these regulations coming up. And I would say this is a huge advantage that we have in Europe, because we do not let the AI companies do everything they want, or do the social media company do all what they want. So we have some kind of regulation, and this the end user can trust. So they use these AI or generative AI coded things, and use it, because I like these systems and we need to use them. But again, you need to trust them as well. And here again, we come to the beginning. Once you have a trusted system, you have a trusted environment, and you can trust I would say the base infrastructure on that, then you can use any software on top, because you have always some kind of ground rules, some hooks that are in the system that don't allow these anonymous systems to do anything they want. If you have your ID, if you need to pay for something, for example, then you need to have trusted wallets. Then you need to have I would say, a trusted base in the car, in the building, in your smartphone. And this is exactly what the end user will understand. I'm not quite sure if it happens this year or next year, or if you need some more years. Yeah, you need to really trust anything what you get would say connected to in the future. Yeah, not to talk about this hybrid warfare stuff, which is coming there. Yeah, because when we always have these huge challenges from the outside, you never know who's infiltrating your systems, and on what system. You have critical infrastructure and all that. So this is definitely something that you not only on a lower level need to trust the systems.
This is also why I think there is right now a sector migration, in the sense that the Web3 natives are moving more towards AI and focusing on AI based on these learnings. And of course, the traditional finance is actually moving towards the Web3 systems, in the sense of actually enabling them themselves, because now regulation allows it. And this also goes back to where, when you have been at Cosmoverse in 2025, where we were just starting to speak about institutional adoption. And for you that have a deep experience in enterprises, you are now seeing in a moment where the industry that you know very well, the Web3 industry, is transforming. And what is your learning there? And what I want to ask you is exactly this. Right now, most of the Web3 native projects are basically pivoting towards towards trying to become a customer to institutions or for institutions to become their customer. But I would say many of those don't really understand what it means to work with that kind of audience. So you that have an experience on both sides, how do you see this transformation happening in the industry?
I think I can see this development happening right now in Europe as well. We all think on different levels about how industry adoption could be more successful. And we now really have that case that it gets more relevant and more urgent to get industry adoption of these trusted services, because we talked about it already, the data sovereignty of whole countries, of the whole European Union, for example. And I know other markets, other countries are really looking closely what's happening in Europe. Yeah, not speaking about China, US, but really a lot of other Asia Pacific markets in other countries like Canada, for example, as well, where all the different the sovereign identity things as well started too. And so the industrial adoption only can happen if the end user and the industry sees, of course, the relevance, with earning money in the future, that data sovereignty is a new value, a really relevant value at the moment that we need to implement. And if we can convince the end user that it's very important that he is an owner of his own data, that he can control his own data, then definitely something will change. Then it will again develop in the direction that they need to have that feature in their products. They want to have decentralized or trusted technologies there. And this is exactly a very, very, I would say, challenging thing that we need to come up with. However, they need to understand and need to learn from the last years what happens if you do not trust your data, or you are not care about the trust in the data. Now, what happens on the other side? Say it when it comes to elections, when it comes to the data that you see every day in the internet, what's happening, and you can trust it anymore and all that. This needs to happen. And so we are in a fierce discussion all the time, every day, with our huge customers on the B2B side, the car manufacturers. And still they have so much pressure at the moment to build products, to sell their products in the future still, that they now try to understand or start to understand why trust in their system needs to come. And on the regulatory side, the EU demands the industry to come up with trusted AI technology. This is exactly where new projects are starting with funding, for example, to allow the industry to build these products. Because the big problem that we have here, the revenues are really shrinking, are decreasing every day because of the Chinese markets, because of the other developments around the world. And they don't have money really to invest a lot here on the Europe side into these new ideas and these products. And so if the government helps to come up, because they want to have the regulations, so they need to help now the industry to comply to these regulations. And together, the industry develops that stuff, and the end user needs, of course, to demand these trusted technologies that they can use. But again, this is a long way still to go. And what we need to do is do a lot of education. That's why I'm sitting here, for example, to tell the people what could happen if we don't change anything here. Because then we really have the same thing with AI, with agents, with all these regulated technologies that just have one thing in mind: make the platform owners much more wealthy and much more powerful, and the end user does not really have control over its data or needs to trust the other side. But again, I think in Europe we have really the big, I would say, opportunity to start that new in development. And I would say other markets in the world definitely will follow that and will demand that as well.
And I think that what you shared today, it's really painting a story that to me is very interesting. This is really the picture of a visionary and having an understanding on how things will go way before they are actually happening, because when you said that in 2010 you were already thinking in terms of this technology, and in 2015, you were actually starting to experiment with DLT way before there was a public resonance also from the retail side and more globally. So what is your advice, especially to younger generation that are coming to this world where there is a growing emergence of autonomous system, there is a growing issue with trust, there is an even more bigger geopolitical tension. What is your advice to the younger generation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Since myself, I have two sons, which is the younger generation, studying at the moment. On the one side, definitely use these new technologies, use AI, start to vibe code, to use AI engineering for yourself, understand what is happening, what you can do with it. This is definitely one of the most important advice, definitely. Don't let the others do it and say it's complicated, too complicated for me, because it's not. Yeah, you always have a companion who explains to you what to do. This is really cool. And with that knowledge, then you need to ask yourself, okay, what is on the other side? What they are doing with my data? Not only take something for granted because it's free. Always ask yourself, what do I want from that system? Can I trust that system? Have some more, I would say, be more critical to what is everything what is free, and that's what I learned in the last 20 years. When it's free, you are the product. Yeah, that's what we all need, all know. And so please, our younger generation, understand it a little bit better. Nothing is free in this world. Yeah. So on the one side, build up your capabilities, your competence, understanding better. And with AI, it's possible. It's really possible without very, very less effort to understand all that, what's happening behind. So you don't have to build your LLMs yourself, but just use it. Use these tools to do that. And on the other side, then if you have more knowledge on that, just really always not be just a silent customer who is happy that something is cheap, but really ask what is behind it. What do I need more? And it's exactly what all the managers tell me every time when we are the car manufacturers. They say, how do you convince the end user? We only sell stuff what the end user is willing to pay for. And if others are giving it for free, why should they pay for services which gives more trust, more security and all that? Yeah, this is exactly what we need to teach the people what is behind it, what is the real idea of the hyperscalers. And it's not that black and white, of course, but again, understand better what is behind their business models. And this is exactly what is education.
You mentioned something that very resonates with me because also from my personal education is critical thinking, like the importance of having critical thinking. And truly, I think is a very important advice for the audience navigating this digital transformation.
Absolutely.
That will be truly what is the main value that we can leverage right now as a human towards this increasing adoption of AI, being critical and starting to understand better the system, actually questioning it, how you're using it,
Absolutely.
what's happened with your data. So this was a very important advice, and thank you for sharing with us. But most importantly, thank you for joining us today for this episode, because I think that this conversation has been extremely valuable. So thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure for having this conversation with you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me as well.